Hi, this is Sheep Mountain as viewed from the valley that my trailer is located in at Bruce Spruce RV Park. I've wanted to make it to the top of this mountain and tried several times last year on day hikes, but it was just too long, too steep for a day hike. So I decided when I came back this year to look at alternate routes. And finally, at the end of the summer, I was able to embark on this adventure. In this Google Earth view, the cursor right now is up around the valley that I live in, and also where the last picture was taken from. But the new route that I've come up with involves going up this road up to Wolf Creek Pass, and then another 1,000 feet from there up to Lobo Point. An advantage of starting at Lobo Point is that I was already above 11,000 feet when I started out, so that would help with acclimation as I traveled along the Continental Divide Trail. The other advantage of starting here was, since I was starting out so high, I was only dealing with changes in hundreds of feet rather than thousands of feet in between my starting point and my base camp. This way I could spend several days getting to the base camp, backpacking along the way, and then also I would have several days to get back to the truck, giving me a day in the middle to actually make the climb. This is from a short distance down the CDT, and way in the distance is Sheep Mountain in between the two handles of my poles. Jumped to breakfast on the second day. This is about 4 miles in at a place called Rock Lake. Here's a picture of Rock Lake where I stayed on the first night. This is a high altitude lake up around 11,000 feet. High meadow on the Continental Divide Trail. I'm now off the Continental Divide Trail. There's no designated trail from here on until eventually I get back to the Continental Divide Trail. I arrived at base camp. I spent 3 days at the base camp, and unfortunately the one video that I took of my base camp fell through the cracks somewhere, so I don't have any pictures of that. Here I'm starting out my day to Sheep Mountain. A fairly easy hike up to the first ridge brings me to here, where we can look across the valley that I'll have to descend down into and then ascend on up the other side to the next ridge that we can see over there. As I was crossing across this valley, I saw perhaps 50 bighorn sheep running along the base of that next ridge over there. A little pika was keeping his eye on me as I crossed across this rock pile. Arriving at the next ridge, I've got an opportunity now to see Sheep Mountain, which is my destination. My original route called for making a beeline from here to the base of Sheep Mountain. Looking at the slope of the talus slope across there where I would need to go, though, I wasn't very comfortable and started looking elsewhere. I noticed what looked like a fairly gradual slope up a wash that came down from the base of the mountain. So I started heading down this grassy slope on the ridge until I ran out of grass, and then there was talus with animal trails in it. So what I ended up doing was sliding down this talus slope on my butt for the next couple hours to get to a place that turned out to be a lot farther than I thought it was going to be, down in the wash. wash turned out to be a lot rougher than I thought it was going to be. Big boulders and rocks and that kind of thing. However, one advantage of taking that route was that I ran into this little leftover snowfield, and my water was getting pretty low, so I was able to break off a chunk of this icy block and put some of it into my liter bottle. After 3 or 4 hours of picking my way up the wash, I finally end up at the saddle at the base of Sheep Mountain. It's now 4:30 in the afternoon. I'm getting quite exhausted, and there's thunderstorms coming in from 2 different directions. It was an easy decision not to go up, but to turn back. Looking back from the saddle towards where I had come from, it was obvious that there were some animal paths going up over that little nose there and then heading back across the top of the, or at least somewhere along the talus slope, so I decided to go that route. Before long, the animal path took a left turn and headed down towards the bottom of the wash where I had already been, and I definitely didn't want to go back down there. So I was on my own, picking my way across this talus slope back towards the ridge that I had started from. This rock was looser than I thought it would be, looser than it generally is on the talus slopes that I've been on, so every step and every handhold had to be tested beforehand to make sure it was going to stay there. Looking back at the wash that I had come up, and beyond that, for people who are perhaps familiar with the area, Rainbow Trail is way on down at the bottom there. After about an hour of picking my way across the top of this talus slope, I was starting to get drops of rain, and I could see the thunderclouds coming in. Fortunately, I was able to find a place where there was a little bit of a rock outcropping where I could sit under it and at least keep my head and upper torso dry. Looking back towards Sheep Mountain across the top of the talus slope, and here you can see the thunderclouds coming in. It wasn't long after this that it started to get pretty dark, and I still had many hours of traveling across this talus slope to go yet before I got back to that last ridge. Since the battery on my iPhone had already depleted and I wasn't able to use my iPhone as a flashlight, I was fortunate that there was nearly a full moon out this night. It took me about 8 hours to get across, finally back to the ridge that I had last come from, and by that time it was 1 o'clock in the morning. I was just about out of water. There's no other water sources available in this area, and I got my chance to drink my own urine for the first time. I'm glad that was available. I continued on down the hill into the bowl that I had come across. I had to go down on my butt on this one because it was pretty steep, and to make a long story short, on my way down, one of the times that I had stopped to catch my breath and take a little break, I had taken off my day pack and also laid my poles down, and at some point I realized I no longer had them with me. I attempted to find, to backtrack, and which was tough, to find my missing articles, and I found my poles, but my day pack wasn't with them, and it was dark enough on this side of the slope where the moon had gone down behind the ridge that I couldn't see very well, and I needed to make the decision to wait it out till daylight, so I found a little place where I could lay down beside a couple of trees in a flat spot on the slope there, and just kind of waited out till it got light. I took this shot at dawn just as I was getting ready to head back up the hill and look for my day pack. It didn't take very long, fortunately, to find my day pack, so all was good. Looking back across the bowl at the ridge that I would need to get to finally to make my trip back to base camp. Up to the last ridge and looking back down what will be a fairly mild hike back down to base camp. I was so exhausted from this trip, I knew I was going to need some extra time to recover, so I extended my stay at base camp from 2 nights to 3 nights. 4 miles on day 5 gets me back to Rock Lake on the Continental Divide Trail. I've been in rain and sun off and on and hail throughout these 4 miles, and when it goes from sun to rain it can drop 20 degrees, and this was a problem for me trying to keep my body temperature where it needed to be. Serious chills are keeping me with all my clothes on and inside my sleeping bag to keep warm. The 4 miles back to my truck were very, very slow. Required a lot of stopping and letting my heart rate come down. Also, I was about a half an hour walking through hail, so I had to have all of my gear on, including my backpack, poncho, and all of that stuff. It was a relief to get to a point where I could see the microwave towers where I was going to end up, even though I still had quite a ways to go yet. As I made my final approach to the towers and my truck, I was very relieved that I was finally back. This shot is from a reconnaissance mission earlier in the season. The shot is taken just off of the Continental Divide Trail, not too far from the Lobo Towers, and off in the distance, top kind of 2/3 up in the center, is an arrow showing where the peak is that I was intending to go to. Not the trip that I had imagined, but still I'm glad I made it, and I'm feeling pretty satisfied at my ability to stay sane and physically endure enough to get myself back.